wow, if this comes to fruition, it's really transformational technology, but this is not all a free market problem. The government plays a really important role in our lives, and there's a pretty steep hill to climb ahead. And so what I've done in the work is to lay out those two factors, the free market facet, if you will, and then the government facet, because I think we each have to take those into account and make as realistic a set of judgments as we can, or as grounded a set of judgments to identify risks, opportunities, and safe plays into the future.
This is the AI Leadership Podcast. Practical, to-the-point content helping you drive results with AI. Here's Chris and Frank.
Welcome to the AI Leadership Podcast. I'm Frank Strickland.
I'm Chris Whitlock.
So, Chris, we have not released a podcast episode in almost a year. It was
And
January
I don't feel
30th.
bad about that.
Well, let me test that quantitatively to see if you feel bad. There are two reasons for that. One is we're retired. And the other reason, we're about to release a major new body of content, which is going to be the principal focus of this podcast episode. But let's just take a moment here. Let me ask you about retirement in a very quantitative way. We've been retired for 4 years. We both retired at 60. By the way, for our listeners, if you want sort of our logic, the way we thought about retiring, and meaning our logic beyond, retirement, the financial stuff that people normally think about. If you want the logic that we thought about around the rest of retirement, because it's not all based on a financial portfolio, there are 3 episodes in the podcast library you can go back and listen to if you're trying to get yourself mentally, emotionally prepared for retirement. But Chris, I'll ask you the question, how it's gone over 4 years in a very quantitative way. So without going too much into private details, I would say each of us have forfeited the opportunity to earn $3 to $5 million in income, roughly, having been retired for 4 years. So do you regret that forfeiture of earning potential?
Oh, not for 1 second. Come on. I don't. Not for 1 second. I mean, I'm very thankful for all the experiences, but having this amount of discretionary time to do some of the things I wanted to do and focus on things I wanted to prioritize has just been fantastic. Yeah, I've loved it. And I mean, I love money as much as anyone else, but no, I don't regret that at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I think the way both of us are rigged, again, in an analytical context, we would say there's a diminishing returns curve between how much money and how happy you are. And so we've kind of gotten to the sweet spot in the curve, thankfully.
Behavioral economists will debate that now.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Key word there is behavioral. I know for us, we just got to a point where we're very comfortable at 60 years of age. We have done something that some consider work. Occasionally people ask us, are you really retired? Because we published a book. We've trained 6,000 leaders and senior executives on AI programs, projects, technology people over the past 4 years.
That's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed that. Yeah,
I think that's the key word, Chris. It hasn't been like work. We've done what we want to do, when we want to do it, with whom we want to do it. And we're both very interested in AI. We read about it, we listen, we think about it, we interact in the market. We'll share some of that today. And so it's not as if that is work.
I'm not even sure I love the word retired generally. It's not like you're unplugging. Certainly for us, I don't feel like I'm unplugged. I'm just running my own schedule and I'm doing the things that I want to do. And I love that. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Well, Chris, that training has led us to a major new body of content that you've created that we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about. I would say a few lessons from our interaction with those 6,000 plus leaders. One, I would say, and I'll harken back to some training I was doing with some government officers just recently. Um, there was a senior government officer, a division director, who came up to me after the training and he said, "Wow, this has quadrupled my knowledge of AI. I thought, for example, that these large language models were just a souped up version of Google search." And so my takeaway from that and our experience in this training people over the past 4 years is there's just a gigantic need, and I think it's there and it'll be there for some time, for business leaders to get much smarter on how to lead the implementation of this technology. Does that resonate with you?
It does. But one of the things that I have loved and I find fantastic is not only are business leaders demonstrating a lot of interest and investing time, so are government and not-for-profits. Actually, I've done a fair amount in the first responder community, and yeah, one of the things that I have really appreciated is the sincere interest to learn more. And not everyone needs to become a technologist, and certainly not everyone is going to become an expert, but we need to learn how to use the tools and guide the implementation. And I'm with you, Frank. There's still plenty of learning to be had. We collectively have not all learned, what would benefit us, but I'm really encouraged by the degree of excitement and interest that we have experienced, at least in the education environments that we've been in.
Yeah. So in the course of doing this training, Chris, you made what I will characterize as a brilliant observation that we're going to unpack in outlining this new body of content we're about to release. So we observed that increasingly both government, business, and also nonprofit organizations were developing AI strategies, but you observed something that wasn't being done so much at the C-suite, investor, board of directors level. They had AI strategies, or they were working on AI strategies, but they had a shortfall in their responsibilities vis-a-vis AI. What was that observation you made?
Yeah, I would actually share it, I think, Frank, from my own sense of a need to learn. In teaching, it's common, and people have been very focused inside the organizational walls. What can AI do to help us improve? And what do I need to watch out for if I am sponsoring its employment, et cetera? But an inside the wall kind of view, and I think that's natural. It's very new technology. People are trying to wrap their head around the best applications and make sure they don't waste a lot of money. And there are numerous arguments about the best ways to do that. But love that. Where I felt personally just a shortfall was questions about the future. And, you and I have had this approach of you don't want to buy into hype, neither do you want to buy into hysteria. You need to have a balanced perspective. I personally was finding that unsatisfying, and partly because I was thinking about my kids, and I was thinking about my children, my extended family, and what is coming. And I didn't like where I was on that, and I went on a bit of a quest this year to structure my thinking about the future in an AI-driven environment. That really is how I would bound my 2025.
So, Chris, you went on a tear, which you are wont to do over your 40-plus year career as an AI leader, an analyst, a historian. It's just in your DNA. You went on a tear of research, reading, and reflecting. And as you took in what the experts were saying about the future, how did all of that hit you as you tried to think through it, putting yourself in the position of a business executive or a government executive?
I think a few things jumped out at me, but I could encapsulate it in two forms. When I was looking at books that had been written on AI in the last 15 years, especially, I did not find a good synthesis that helped me think about the future and in an accessible way understand what that could look like in a bounded set of scenarios. And I began a process of just listing out and thinking through different factors in the AI environment, which we customarily will talk about, which industry experts will talk about, that may set the pace or define the future of AI. And if you're not living in that world, which the vast majority of us do not, it's a lot to sort out. And to expect an executive who's running a business proficiently now to a standard expected by current investors, to wrap their head around that diverse, myriad of opinions, to me is a little bit unrealistic. So what I focused on was just a first principles approach. And I asked, what are the two most important factors that will define the shape of AI in the future? And if I can do that, I'll get 4 scenarios that come out of that. And then I can begin to think about how those fit together in a systematic way such that I can communicate them. And it really all started with that journey. How do I make sense of all of this noise in the environment? Look at the different factors that might influence the way the AI looks and get that into some structured form that any of us could understand so that we can better plan. And that's the key to me. We're entering a really destructive decade, in my view. And I was sitting with a pharmaceuticals executive recently, a CEO of a pharmaceuticals company, and I was sharing with him the material. And he said, man, I get the longer term view. He said, but if I've got a takeaway right now that I'm thinking about, this is a really tough decade that's coming ahead.
Yeah.
Based on what you've laid out, the expert opinions, et cetera, I need to step back and think about that. And that's, for me, that's a victory. That's what I'm chasing with this work, is whether you're an individual making career decisions, a household, family, you're trying to run your family, or you're an organizational executive, you've got to get your head wrapped around what is coming, because it is not going to stop. It's beyond the control for the vast majority of us, and we're going to be experiencing it. And we got to be positioned well to avoid problems.
If this content is of use to you, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give this episode a like. If you're listening to this episode on Apple or Spotify, please take time to give us a 5-star rating. And if you have a moment, leave us a quick review. You'll find more resources like this podcast and training courses at our site, aileaders.com. Let us know what you think. We value your feedback.
I'll tell you, in the journey, Frank, one of the other things, and it's really become the crux for me of how I approach the work. On the one hand, it's, what are all these factors? How do I get that down to the 2 most strategic ones and frame 4 scenarios that I can then think about in time? The second thing that I found really compelling is the CEO of OpenAI, which develops ChatGPT and runs ChatGPT. His name is Sam Altman, and he's written a couple of essays over the past 4 years. One that was really pivotal for me in my thinking was entitled Moore's Law for Everything. And he wrote it in 2021. It's well done. But he has this dual problem set that he articulates. And on the one hand, he says the AI industry has got to come through in building the advanced models and the applications that would capture this really higher level form of intelligence, artificial intelligence. But the other one, and this hit me hard when I read his paper, and I appreciate him doing this. He said, we must also change social policy drastically, or, quote, most people are going to end up worse off than they are today, unquote. That hit me like a sledgehammer. And that's when I began to process, for my children's sake, for my extended family, thinking about colleagues that I have in business, etc. Wow. If this comes to fruition, it's really transformational technology, but this is not all a free market problem. The government plays a really important role in our lives, and there's a pretty steep hill to climb ahead. And so what I've done in the work is to lay out those two factors, the free market facet, if you will, and then the government facet, because I think we each have to take those into account and make as realistic a set of judgments as we can, or as grounded a set of judgments to identify risks, opportunities, and safe plays into the future. And just letting it happen to you is, to me, the way to maximize the risk. You'll just take it as it comes. Far better for us in all situations in life to have a little bit of forethought and a little bit of preparedness. And that's what this book's about. And that's what I think our work is about in the year or two ahead.
So you saw the need for something that helps executive leaders think in a systematic way about the future. You narrowed your analysis down to 2 strategic questions, 4 futures. In the work that you've done, and we'll come back in a moment to the form that the work is going to be released, but in the work that you've done, just to clarify for our audience, are you using the 4 futures to predict the future? What are you doing with the futures in the work you've done?
I don't believe anyone who thinks that they know exactly what is going to happen. I view the future as uncertain, but I view these 4 scenarios as bounding the possibilities. And if we take those into account, it's a little bit like we all are in a betting situation, a gambling situation almost. We don't get the option to sit out. The external environment for us, the world is going to change, and we got to make smart bets, right? Every one of us, business leaders, government leaders, not-for-profit leaders, families, individuals. The game's going on, and you got to put chips on the board, right? You got to make bets. And I don't know exactly what is going to happen, but I believe this framework is powerful in capturing what the options are, and then we each need to weigh those options relative to our business, family, or individual situation to get to the right posture, the safest posture, if you will.
Okay. And so you've looked at those 4 alternative futures, those 4 scenarios, both in a free market context and then also in the government's ability to affect changes in each of those 4, respond to changes in each of those 4. You've done this work, Chris. One form that it's going to be released in is in a book. So you have spent the better part of this year researching and writing for the purposes of publishing a book. When can our listeners look for that book, and what might the working title of that book be?
The publisher is anticipating that we'll have this out in the very early portion of 2026, the February timeframe of 2026. American Roulette is the working title of the book to get at this issue of we all have to place our bet. We can't opt out of the game. And it's 4 scenarios that shape a turbulent decade ahead. That's what the book is about in its heart. And it looks farther than that into the future. But I think for all of us, we need to take a pretty steely-eyed appraisal of the next 10 years and what is likely to come. Try to move beyond hype, look at the practical elements, and get ourselves positioned without either retreating into hysteria. So I haven't given up on our earlier ways that we would articulate that, Frank. But there are a range of possibilities, and you do not want to assume only one can come to fruition because the impacts could be really substantial and different for organizations, households, and individuals.
Yeah, Chris, just to put a bow on this and to compliment you, you've mentioned this a couple of times. So for our listeners, we would say on the front end of the senior leader and executive training that we've done on how to lead AI programs, projects, people, technology, we would say there's a lot of hyperbolic talk in the market. There's a lot of hysteria in the market. You don't want to be on either of those poles. But what you have done, Chris, is now taken and put that into just a much more systematic, strategic framework that leaders can use to not only not be in either of those poles, but to take these 4 scenarios and use them to think about their future. So just major kudos to you. It's a fantastic piece of work. I
appreciate that. It's been a fun 2025 in that regard. It's been great intellectual work and have benefited from talking with a lot of people and interacting on it. So it's been a great 2025.
So, Chris, book comes out in the February timeframe. We think the book will be both engaging and practically useful for executives in business, government, nonprofit. We think investors will get a lot of stimulation and useful thinking out of the book. With boards of directors, we think could read the book and talk about it, and it would be really helpful to boards of directors. But what, if anything, would you suggest that those leaders and leader teams need to do as they get their mind around that content? What would you suggest in a consultative way?
Generally, Frank, I think a challenge that we all have, we've certainly experienced it in delivering education, but I experience this all the time with everyone that I talk to. If you raise the topic of AI, we tend to have an instinctive response. I don't believe this is going to turn out the way that everybody talks. It's not going anywhere. Oh, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be transformational. People tend to gravitate towards a dominant point of view. And the challenge for leader teams is you need some clarity and alignment on what the possibilities are. And you're going to have to grapple with degrees of certainty. You've got to place your bets because some of these could be on us quickly. And if they are, being prepared for the different ones may look quite different. It's almost like in football, the defense you run, if you believe your opponent is going to run the ball, is different than the defense you run if they're going to pass the ball. And that's the impact of these scenarios. But to really make that come alive, I think you've got to educate and align as a team. And then there's some strategizing that can take place in workshop format initially to think about what this looks like. What are the implications of scenario X, scenario Y? How do we weight the possibilities? And from that, you can take other steps. But the core to me is dealing with this problem that we all have an instinctive response, which may be legitimate but incomplete. It may be legitimate but wrong. And you got to get people aligned on the problem and in a way that they can talk and understand the media and commentary in a better way moving forward.
Hmm. So we are doing a couple of things to help with that. Chris alluded to workshops to help leader teams align. We are taking the book content and building a workshop experience that we can deliver to leaders and leader teams to help them think about their opportunities, about their risk, about safe plays, and begin to do the intellectual work that they need in order to have a strategy that is looking out into the future and accounts for these alternative futures. As a complement to that, each of the scenarios that Chris describes in the book has a set of indicators. These are things that can be measured or assessed, at least, that point you toward that scenario. And we are actually building a model and a dashboard that will allow organizations to use both the indicators that we have to add their own indicators, so that once they come out of a workshop with a point of view aligned around a point of view on the future, not just kind of their immediate strategy to get ROI out of AI, once they come out of the workshop with that type of strategy, they've got a model that they can use to then assess as the future unfolds and make refinements to their strategy. So
Yeah, and
we
Frank,
think those
one
two
thing
things.
I would emphasize as you went through that, I don't know that I've interacted with an organization that does not have an AI strategy, to your earlier point, and which is thinking about ROI. To me, that is not the challenge right now. The challenge is not what is AI going to do in your organization. It's what's it going to do to your external world. This revolution is going to impact customers, competitors, vendors, investor expectations, and the government environment may change. And you've got to wrap your head around that external world, because some of these things are highly incongruous. We hold these assumptions in our mind that we think are going to maintain in the future years, but in 3, 5, 10, and 15 years, there's a very high likelihood we're going to hit successive difficult phases that businesses are going to have to traverse. And it's not what's about inside your wall with AI. It's about what AI is doing to the planet around you. And in all of those dimensions, that's one sharp point I would put on that for people.
Nice. So, Chris, in addition to the teaching that we do, the workshops, the modeling, we're going to be doing some public talks. You've got a couple of talks scheduled. If people are interested and still have an opportunity to attend those, just mention those if you would, please.
Yeah, I have another one coming up at the DevLearn conference. That's Las Vegas. There are about 5,000 professionals that convene there for the Las Vegas event. I am being hosted by ELB, which is a training and education company with a long legacy of delivering in the S&P 500. I have another virtual event that they are hosting on the 10th of December. And then I've got some other tentative ones that are coming up in early in 2026 that we can update on later. But those are speaking events where I'll be sharing the content prior to the release of the book.
Cool. So we'll keep you guys apprised of the speaking events that we're doing through our website and through this podcast and our email list. If you want to learn more information about the book and when it's coming out, if you want to get yourself on a list for an early offering of the book, if you want to give us feedback, if you have questions, if you want to interact with us about educational workshops for your organization, just go to aileaders.com, and we'd be happy to hear from you and interact. So for Chris and I, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate appreciate you.
Likewise.